What if I told you that for 200 years we've been reading a history book where the protagonist was literally invisible? We like to think our understanding of the past is built on cold, hard facts, the kind you can hold in your hand or see with a microscope. But history isn't just what happened, it's how we choose to look at what survived. For 2 centuries, one specific grave near Stonehenge told us a story about stout men and masculine power, until modern science stepped in and realized the narrator was wrong. Today, we're going to peel back that layer of bias. We'll start by looking at how an 1803 excavation created a ghost narrative based purely on physical size. Then we're diving into the high-tech forensic revolution that identified this individual as a woman, a master craftswoman, and spiritual leader. Finally, we're going to explore what this does to our understanding of prehistoric power. If she wasn't just an outlier, but a blueprint for how Bronze Age society actually functioned. Let's start where the story began in 1803. Imagine a world before DNA testing, before carbon dating, when science was often just an educated person making a very good guess based on what they could see with their own eyes. It sounds primitive to us now, but it was the cutting edge of its time. William Cunnington, an explorer and antiquarian, spent his days unearthing the secrets of Britain's ancient past. When he reached this specific burial site near Stonehenge place, saturated with myth and massive, lithic energy, he found something that stopped him in his tracks. He saw bones that were large. They were robust, thick-set, and displayed significant muscle attachment points. In the 19th century, there was only one logical conclusion for such physical stature in an elite burial. This was a man, a warrior, perhaps even a king of the prehistoric tribes. And so, that fact became baked into our textbooks. For 200 years, we looked at these remains and saw a masculine archetype A story of men building monuments, men wielding weapons, and men holding the keys to spiritual authority. We built an entire historical narrative on the assumption that power had a specific shape, broad shoulders and heavy bones. But what happens when you change the lens? What happens when you stop looking at how big someone looked and start looking at who they actually were? Enter the era of genomic archaeology. In recent years, researchers took a different approach to Cunnington's stout man. They didn't just look at the size of the bones, they reached into the very marrow, extracting DNA from the skull, teeth, and even the toes of this individual who had been resting in the dirt for 4,000 years. The results were staggering. The stout man wasn't a man at all, she was a woman. This isn't just a minor correction of a biological typo in an old book. This is a fundamental dismantling of our historical narrative. It proves that while we were looking for kings to build monuments, women were already holding the tools of production and the symbols of sacred authority. Let's look at what she was actually carrying into the afterlife. Because in archaeology, grave goods are basically an ancient person's resume. They tell you who they were and why they matter to their community. This woman wasn't buried with domestic trinkets or simple jewelry. She was buried with gold working tools. Think about the sheer technological leap that is metallurgy. To work with gold in the Bronze Age required more than just hobbyist skills. It required an intimate knowledge of heat management, chemical reactions, and precision craftsmanship. She was part of a high-value industry. She wasn't just making beads for her neighbors, she was mastering the most sophisticated technology of her era. This suggests a society where women weren't relegated to domestic spheres, but were central figures in the economic engine, the literal gold standard of their civilization. But it gets even more interesting when you look at what else was in that grave. Alongside those gold tools sat a battle axe. Now, traditionally, we've been conditioned to see the warrior role as exclusively male. But here is our shaman, or craftswoman, carrying both the tool of production and the weapon of defense or ritual. It suggests she held what we might call dual authority. She wasn't just a laborer, she was likely a figure of significant social weight, perhaps even a proto-shamanic leader. In many ancient cultures, the person who could manipulate gold transforming raw earth into shimmering wealth was seen as someone with a connection to the divine. If you combine that economic power with spiritual symbols and physical strength, well, you don't have a stout man, you have a powerhouse of an individual. Now, let's pause for a second because I want to hear from you on this one. When we find out that our history books got something as fundamental as gender wrong in these ancient sites, does it make you trust your other historical facts more? Or does it make you wonder how many other stories are currently being told by the wrong narrators? Drop a comment and let's talk about it. One thing that really bugs me, and I think we should be curious about this, is her robustness. Why did she have bones that looked so much more masculine than typical female remains from the period? It's a fascinating mystery. It suggests she wasn't just someone who sat in a palace giving orders, she was likely engaged in high-intensity physical labor or held a role that required genuine, raw strength. This challenges the very idea that women were excluded from physically demanding work in prehistoric Britain. She lived her life with weight on her shoulders, literally and figuratively. Think about the human story here for a moment. Imagine being this woman 4,000 years ago. You mastered the secrets of fire and metal. You perhaps led your people through rites that defined their reality. You were an elite figure in a world of massive stones and shimmering gold. And then imagine how she would feel if we could ever know about the fact that for 200 years after her death, every historian on Earth who looked at our grave would assume she was a man simply because they didn't have our tools to see the truth. It's wild, isn't it? We often think of progress as something that only moves forward better medicine, faster computers, more complex laws. But sometimes progress is about looking backward and realizing we were staring at the wrong thing all along. This discovery isn't just correcting history. It's rewriting the DNA of our collective memory. It tells us that power, craftsmanship, and spirituality weren't partitioned off into neat little boxes based on gender in the Bronze Age. They were woven together, held by people who were stronger, smarter, and more complex than our 19th century imaginations could handle. We are still looking for her name. We don't know her lineage or the specific titles she held. But we do know that there were women like her hidden in plain sight, buried under our feet, waiting for us to develop the eyes to see them properly. Next time you look at an ancient monument and think about who built it, remember that history is often written by those who survived, but its secrets are kept by those we haven't learned to see yet.